welcome back to the final episode of the Strong Opinion Hibs podcast for this season, just to round up the 2021-22 season. Our host is always Calvin. I'm joined by Jack and Charlie. How are you, lads?
I'm buzzing, mate. The season's over. Come on.
Jack?
Oh, I'm over the moon. I had a brilliant day yesterday, obviously, at both games, because it was two games for me. Won the Plastics at Easter Road for the men, beating St Johnstone 4-0. That was a good result, and it was great to see James Scott get a hat-trick. It was actually really nice to speak to James after the game as well. Then it was a quick hop over to Pennycook to see the Hibs women game, 0-0 against Glasgow City, which is obviously a good result. And nice to speak to girls and thank them for all the time that they've given me over the season. I mean, get some nice pictures as well. And obviously got my photo with Scotland's number one, Lee Alexander, who, my opinion's a better number one than Craig Gordon. So there you go.
I think that's us. We can just wrap up there, mate. Jack summed up pretty nicely.
There you go. That's some statement there. So episode 71, Jack, as you alluded to, James Scott hat-trick. So we've called this episode Scott Scuds the Saints, which is something I thought we'd never hear. But right, we'll quickly run through the lineup for yesterday because there was a few changes again. We got Macy in goals, back three of McGinn, McGregor as the captain, and Porteous, a midfield four of Harry Clark, Joe Newell, Lewis Stevenson, and Josh Doig, with Ewan Henderson sitting just behind the two strikers and Melkerson and Scott. So it was what did you make of the game then, Jack? Just talk to me very briefly about the first half.
I think the first half, I mean, obviously, I've got to say, first of all, was throughout the game, but in particular in the first half, the way they were playing, you can tell St Johnstone have one eye on the playoff already. You know, they'd had a heavily rotated team, and you know, you can tell that Inverness is their main focus. They were, to me, St Johnstone quite lethargic. I know they've been like that all season, but they weren't really. You could tell they weren't really up for it. As for us, we were playing like we wanted to give the fans something back. If you see what I mean, it was actually a solid first half showing from us. You know, we were looking quite dangerous, keeping the ball on the deck well. You know, I thought our passing was good by our standards for this year. Obviously, sometimes a lot of times this season we're misplaced passing them, but I thought our passing was good, keeping the ball down well. And yeah, but overall, I've got to say, you could tell that was a second string St Johnstone that had no interest in this game. You know, they're just purely focused on the playoffs, and I think that maybe got to them a bit.
And obviously, Charlie, you were working, so you missed the game, but was there any sort of thoughts? Did you manage to catch the highlights of that the first half?
I got home in time I missed the first 5 minutes, but I was able to catch the whole game on Hibs TV. So I thought it was a typical end of season game. There was nothing really to write home about in the first half, other than maybe our goal. But I mean, our goal was in the first half, right? I'm not.
Yep.
Phew, I thought I was a typical plastic.
44 minutes, I think it was.
Aye. Yeah. I mean, it was nice to go in 1-0 up, but to be honest, like, other than the goal, there was nothing really in the first half that made me shout. Like, I was bored to tears during the first half, mate.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I thought the first half was pretty boring. And I thought St Johnstone were probably the better team first half. I just thought Hibs were pretty boring. And I actually put a thing on my Instagram story saying 45 minutes of the season left. I was looking forward to it sort of ending, which sort of tells the tale of the season. But they came out, they went in 1-0 up. And just to quickly talk about the goal, it was a good ball into the box, obviously. And then it was kind of a wee bit of a debate between, obviously, Super Paul McGinn and Porteous to see who claimed it. Who did you think scored it?
Oh, you can't take the overhead kick away from Paul McGinn. Like, that was a typical end of season goal. Like, I'm just going to hit and hope. But no, it was McGinn's goal. Like,
aye,
yeah, definitely McGinn's
goal.
You
get it to McGinn. I think the hint's in the name, Super Paul McGinn. So I'll give him the goal. Right, second half, guys. We started pretty well. Came out the traps and. Something that James Scott first goal, I think, was kind of written in the stars. It was very fitting, but it's something that I think we seriously lacked all season was a bit of luck. Honestly, just to put a ball in a box, and the amount of balls we've put into the box this season, and it's been an inch away from going in, which would have probably changed, you know, the sort of the trajectory of our season quite drastically if, you know, a couple of times we'd have just got something on the end of a cross. this one, last game of the season, meaningless game, ball into the box, hits off James Scott. He doesn't care anything about it. And before you know, we're 2-0 up and everybody's absolutely buzzing. Just completely changes the atmosphere. So what did you think about that goal, guys? I thought we were definitely due a bit of luck this season.
Yeah, I agree. Crying out for it all season, just something to give, for it to a good ball into the box, just to even hit. I mean, obviously James kent nothing about that, but just for a player to be there and for them to hit off them and go in, we've been crying out for that bit of luck all season, and that's what it is luck. A bit like I'd say Paul McGinn's goal against Aberdeen. Just stick a foot out or be there, and you never know, it can hit off you and go in. So I think it's definitely something, I agree with you, mate, that we've been missing all season, just that tiny little bit of luck for a ball to come into the box and hit off a player and go in. And obviously it's a shame that it's only happened in the last game of the season, but still, all credit to us. I thought it was a lovely move, and it was capped off by James being very much at the right place at the right time.
Yep, and speaking of right place at the right time as well, is his second goal, our third goal of the afternoon, came for quite a good, well worked pass from between Newell and Porteous, and then flicked into the middle of the box again, crossed into the middle box, and James is just standing there to tuck it home, which I think you could tell his confidence was really high at that time as well, which probably helped him out with his movement. But the pick of the bunch for me has got to be his header. To round off his hat tricks. That was just stuff of dreams. What would you make of his second and third goal, lads?
I think it reminds me a wee bit of Doidge when he hit that purple patch in front of goal a few years ago. Just that first one that he got on midweek at Dundee, like I think that really helped him. And you saw in his interview midweek, I think it was very good to see that he almost was apologetic to the fans that he's not been able to score. And like we said, I think it was maybe last week, he's only 21, he's still got a lot to learn, but the third goal was pick of the bunch, made the way it's almost like he's jumping backwards to meet it as well. It was just a very, very good goal. And like I say, it couldn't have happened to a nicer guy, because he's been good this season. I know he's taken a lot of stick, but when he's been in the team,
been good in the last couple of weeks. I wouldn't say last season, but
I think though, he came in unfit, and I think you've got to blame Hull for that. And it took him a wee while to get up to scratch. And I think since the semi-final, been, for my money, the best attacking threat we've had. So like I say, it couldn't have happened to a nicer guy.
Yeah, but I've got to agree with that. I think I was actually speaking to James after when all the players were coming out, and I went over him and shook his hand, and I said, well done, mate, because I know, I was saying to him, you don't deserve the abuse you got. You're a lovely guy, and I wish you all the best. And it's true. I think for all the boo boys and the folk that were booing him when he came on, which I thought was disgusting. I think that was at the Ross County game when he came on. And everybody that's been giving him abuse and everything like that, you know what? That shuts them up. I didn't care if it's the last game of the season, because he deserved it. He deserved that moment, and he really did. He really deserved that moment. So fair play to James, because I think he's really come on to a game in the past couple of weeks. And even before that, I think there was games there was one. It was in the St Johnstone game. If Josh, we were talking about this before, that if Josh Doig had been a bit more clinical when James had put that ball through for him, he would have got an excellent assist there. If you remember, against St Johnstone, the 0-0 at football for a fiver. So I think James, had he come up in a better condition than what he was in, which you're completely right, Charlie's Hull's fault. If he'd come up in a better condition, we could have been getting bags of goals out of him. You know what I mean? He could have been scoring for fun, because you can see that. You can see that there was a player in there. And I know we're probably not going to go in for him permanently, but if he was to come back up, I think he'd be a good squad player at least. So yeah. I mean, fair play to James, but that third goal was excellent. The awareness, and that you just, because I know one of the criticisms was he wasn't going up for headers enough. So just the way he gets that, nods it across, and obviously St Johnstone's second choice goalkeeper had a bit of a struggle with that. I think if it had been Teen Wolf, we might have maybe not had so many goals.
We'd have put 7 past them.
I think that's kind of the catch-22. It's obviously a very good header, the technique, and that's pretty good, but for St Johnstone point of view, it's probably quite a bad goal to lose. Just to touch on James Scott as well, I wouldn't say I've been a boo boy, but I've not been his biggest fan. For me, to come to a club like Hibs, I mean, it's a privilege. It's a privilege to play for Hibs, and I think the fact he couldn't get himself fit, for me, if I got the chance to play for Hibs, I'd be doing as many extras as I can. I'd go around the park late at night. I'd be putting in all the extra work I can to try and get in and play for such such a good team, a good club with good rich history in that. And for me, I think
you can blame Jack Ross for that as well, though. Like
I think it comes down to the individual, though. For me, like it comes down to the individual. I mean, if he wanted to play and get himself fit, I think he could have. And for me, I just feel like there's only so much Jack Ross and that another folk can do for him. I think he could have helped himself a wee bit. And didn't get me wrong, I'm absolutely delighted that it's turned out sort of rosy in the end for him, and it has went really well. And I'm obviously delighted he scored, Ken, was that 4 goals for Hibs now, which is fantastic. And I do think, like you're saying, if he was to come back next year, I think he'd come back probably with a little bit of a better reception. I think he'd be quite well received. But I just feel like it's a wee bit unfortunate. It's maybe too little, too late. But again, it's very easy to single him and Dre Wright out this season. But I don't think anybody's been particularly outstanding. But I wouldn't say I was one of the Boo Boys, but I certainly wasn't his biggest fan, especially when we needed him the most. He wasn't there, which was unfortunate. But no, I'm delighted for him, and I hope he has a good spell wherever he goes next, unless it's Hearts, obviously.
Well, I was saying to him when I went out to the car that I said, now every single week we've done a podcast, so when you've come up, I've said you're going to score, so you've done it eventually. Thank you, James. And I was like, oh, but seriously, I knew there was a player there. I knew there was a player, even when he was unfit. I knew there was a player there because I remember him for his time at Motherwell, and remember him for, and he sort of started okay when he went down south. So I think I definitely think there is a player there.
Aye, I completely agree with what you're saying, guys. So, Jack, like you said, mate, you were a ground hopper yesterday, no bad for a plastic. You were obviously at Easter Road, then you were off to Pennycook, mate. Watching the women in their final game of the season as they faced Glasgow City a 0-0. Just talk to me about the highlights, mate. What were some of the key standouts for you?
Well, I think I've got to say, first of all, was how we sort of went into that game. I was expecting Glasgow City to play a second team because obviously they've got a cup final next week against Celtic at Tynecastle, and for them, if they do not win a trophy this season, that's going to be like a huge blow for Glasgow City. They've lost the league, they lost the League Cup to Celtic, so they need to win a trophy. So I thought, but no, they played a strong team. They're big players like Chinchilla and all that. Apart from Lee Alexander not playing, there wasn't, and Claire Shine, there wasn't really any Glasgow City players that you wouldn't expect to be in. You know what I mean? There wasn't any Glasgow Cities you'd expect not to be there. But we played really, really well. We really stepped up to the plate against that. We had a really strong team out. Again, a lot of strength on the bench, as we've been talking about the past couple of games. And we just went out and we were, I think for most of the game, we were the better team than Glasgow City. I've got to say, Glasgow City were getting awful bogged down in midfield. They weren't really offering much up front. I think we neutralised it. Now, considering Chinchilla got the PFA Player of the Year, where was she in the game? She was missing. Siobhan was marking her out the game. So was Joelle. And I think there's not really any key highlights I can really pick out because it was very much like a physical battle. One I've got to say is right at the end, Colette Kavanagh had a huge chance. She's through on goal. And I think she maybe doesn't anticipate how much time she has and hits it first time and it goes over the bar just. And then there was one with Amy Gallagher, very similar, I don't know if you remember, to Martin Boyle against Rangers, where she dummies a player and then gets flagged offside. Because I was on the side of the linesman, and I was like, "What the hell do you think you're doing?" And Amy was going mental at him because she dummies. I think it was Maya Bates, Glasgow City fullback that was on Amy's side. She dummies her, goes round her, and then the linesman flags. Now, had he have no flagged, we had Glasgow City caught up there. If Amy had been through, and then after that, I think we were scared to try and go forward because the linesman was flagging just about everything. So I think he's been to the Willie Collum school of just give everything. I've got to say, the flag's not a toy. You didn't need to use it all the time. It's as simple as that. But I thought it was a really solid performance. As for Glasgow City, you can sort of tell they had one eye on the cup final, but we really stepped up to play because Glasgow City's a side we've struggled against a lot recently. I'd say obviously after Hearts, they're our biggest rivals, Glasgow City, in women's football, because obviously that history.
Depends who you ask. It could be Spartans.
Well,
they seem to think there's a rivalry there.
I think I'm not going to get involved in that one because it does tend to get a bit.
And was there any standout players for you yesterday, Jack?
Yeah, I think definite. First of all, Siobhan and Ellis. you know, both, and Ellis deservedly Player of the Year as well. I think she's a solid 7, 8 out of 10 every game. You know, she does what she needs to do. Ellis and Siobhan are brilliant. Like I said, you know, we're marking all of Glasgow City's big dangerous players at the game. There's not once I thought Glasgow City were ever that dangerous to us. Amy Gallagher stood out to me. She's was excellent, you know, making those marauding runs and putting a bit of pressure on the Glasgow back line. Ailey did a fantastic amount of running, and not just, I think, she did pulled her weight defensively as well. When Glasgow City were sort of pressing us, Ailey was going back and winning the ball back in midfield and then sprinting it up the pitch. Ailey was really busting a gut and putting in an effort. Leah Eddy, I think Leah Eddy had another good game. So those are my sort of standout players for us. I don't think Gabby was ever bothered that much by the Glasgow City attack, and I think midfield, Shannon McGregor, you could argue as well. Like Shannon McGregor had a good game, pulling the strings as she always does. So yeah, but overall, again, like the past couple of games for us, just a really good team performance. You know, you couldn't really single anybody out because we were working as a unit, we're working as a group, and that's what you want out of a squad. You know, you want them to be together and work as a squad, because you can have all the best players you want and they might not gel. Whilst we've got a good group that are there for each other and fight for each other. So I think, yeah, it was a really good battling performance, and I'm not going to complain with a point off of Glasgow City because we've been due a bit of luck against them. I know we didn't win, and it would have been outstanding to win, but I tell you, that draw feels like a win. It was like when we drew England, Scotland drew England at the Euros, because everybody, all the people I know on anyone's game were predicting that Glasgow City were absolutely going to hammer us. You know, they'll get some revenge for not winning the league and they'll take it out on us and everything. Where was it? Where was it? Princia Chinchilla, Player of the Season, my backside. Look at it. Siobhan Hunter masterclass. That's all I've got to say. Siobhan Hunter marked her out the game. But yeah, it was a really fantastic battling point from us, and we deserved it. And a great end to what's been a decent league campaign. You've got to remember, as Joelle said in her video that she did, which I thought was fantastic, you know, I think what Joelle said is it's a transitional season. We're transitioning into that sort of new phase at the women's team. And I think, considering it's a transitional season, securing fourth in that best of the rest status, you can't really complain at all, considering it's a transitional season. Yeah. There's big things ahead. So yeah, overall, really proud of the girls for getting a battling, hard-fought point that at the end of the day, we deserved, in a great way to cap off what's been a really good league campaign.
Yeah, as you say there, Jack, you know, a little bit of analysis on the season, but what we'll do in a couple of episodes' time is we're going to come back over both the men's and the women's seasons, just for the listeners to keep you in the loop. We're going to take a look at our season. We're going to do a season review, so we'll compare it against our season preview, and then we'll sort of sum up as to, you know, whether or not we thought the campaigns were.
I watched the season preview episode the other night, Calvin, and I've got to say we got it very, very wrong.
I think I said I'd been happy. Men's, I think I said I'd be happy with fifth. I think you used to be a wee bit more, and maybe more.
I can pretty sure remember I said there was a chance of us splitting the Old Firm. How stupid that looked now.
Anyway, we'll get to it like that. That's what it come with that excitement. But there's an interesting debate as well. I mean, Hibs women. I'm really looking forward to the discussion because we're sitting. We're sitting, if my math is right, 17 points behind the third place. However, we're about 14 points in front of fifth. So it's quite a big gap between the teams above us and the teams below us. So it's going to be a really interesting podcast. So stay tuned for things like that. Now, what we're going to do just now sort of leads on a little bit, just to sort of, this is our last sort of review of both the men and women's team for the season before we come back and we do our season previews and you know, rebuilding Hibs and stuff, and all the different content you can see on our Twitter page that we've got coming. We're going to do a brilliant behind the scenes video as well, taking a look at people who, you know, not the 11 that play on the pitch, but people behind the scenes this year, people like Greg McEwen with, you know, the fantastic bit of business he's been able to do and you know, secure a lot of partnerships for the club. And then obviously Stevie for the Dnipro Kids talk about sort of the great things he's done, and, you know, the come back and touch on the great strips and that Peter designed this year. And there's a lot of things that have went on well at the club. So there's lots of great content coming. But just to quickly round off this season, so for you two, who's been your favourite player, or who do you think's been a player that sort of whenever I'm doing this podcast, my mind just runs at a million miles an hour, and I can never think of my words. But who's maybe a player that's exceeded your expectations, both men's and women's, this season?
When you go first, big boy.
I'll start with the men's. For me, it's definitely Lewis Stevenson. I remember when he signed his new contract, there was a lot of people on Twitter giving him a lot of sticks, saying what's he done to deserve this new contract, etc. And I remember I tweeted saying Lewis is a fantastic player to have in the squad because he offers great cover, and that's exactly what he's done this season. And then some. You see that last night when he wins Players Player of the Year, and well deserved, Lewis. He's been absolutely fantastic every game he's played for Hibs this season. And I went in with the expectation he'd maybe play 2 or 3 games this year because I expected Doig to kick on, but he's played in centre mid, like he's played centre back, he's played all over the park, and he's just been brilliant every time. So he's definitely exceeded expectations. Women's team, I've got to give it to Ailey Adams. I think never really expected her to score as many as she had or play as much as she had, but I think she's been brilliant. You see that in the derby, scored in every single derby against Hertz this year, and got a new contract for our performances as well. So I think those two have definitely been players that I had sort of expected to have a relatively all right season, but both blown out of the water.
Jack?
I think for the men's, I'm going to say the player that sort of really stood out to me is Chris Carden. You know, I think last season I didn't really see like that much of it. We didn't really see that much of Chris, if you see what I mean. He looked solid, but you're like, what's he going to do this season? You didn't really know how he was going to perform or where he was going to fit in. And I think when Chris has played for us, he's been fantastic, and he utterly deserved that Player of the Year award last night. I think he's been one of our, obviously, it's not been a great season, but he's been one of our best players this season, hands down. I think he's always getting dangerous balls into the box, doing his defensive work when he needs to. And I just didn't know, like I said, I just didn't know what we were going to get out of Chris, because obviously last season he sort of came in and he was so for me when he came in last season. You know, I didn't really see that much of him, like I said, but this season he's just been fantastic. You know, putting in solid performances just about every game. So yeah, for me it's got to be Chris Carden. For the women's team, this is an interesting one because there's a few, but I've got one, I've nailed one down. And I'm going to say for the women's team, I'm going to say Shannon McGregor, because, you know, that really bad injury, she hadn't played football for 2 years until she came back this season. And you just didn't, you think like an injury like that is potentially career ending, the way Shannon, because Shannon, she done her knee at the start of last season, and then she did it again, sort of not long after that. So she was completely out for the count, but she worked really hard to get herself back, and she's been fantastic ever since she's come back. You know, every time you bring her on and every time you start her, she changed the game, and we've spoken about it so many times. She has that football brain, Shannon McGregor. She can spot the killer passes, she can get things going in midfield. So yeah, for me, Shannon McGregor, because honestly, she's been a warrior and she's come back with such a horrible injury, and it's like she's never been away.
Well, I think for the men's, I'm going to say Porteous. I think Porteous has matured quite a lot this season in terms of just his overall calmness and play on the ball. And some of the big games I've had, like the Derby, Easter Road springs to mind. Like, I know it was 0-0 in that, and we never done particularly well in the derbies, but I just think he really stood up to the plate, and the way he sort of controlled the back line, and like, you know, he was put his body on the line and things like that. I was really impressed with sort of how good he's been on the ball this year and how calm he is as well. I think he's been a real asset. He's really matured from last year. He always seemed like a bit of I just still a wee bit like a wee laddie, like a young guy. But now he's definitely matured into a man. And I think for me, for the women's team, I'd have probably said Amy Muir. Just before she got injured, I just thought she was a fantastic right back. I thought she'd done really well. Just on the ball and that, like just her sort of our body positioning in terms of like how she shields the ball and how she uses her body, opens up her body to receive the pass and things like that. Like, it's just very natural, and it's very like, it's a very good technique. But due to injury and things like that, I'll probably have to give it to Cav. I thought Colette Kavanagh was really, really good this year. Just one of those players that whenever she's on the ball is quite exciting. Do you know what I mean? Like you always think something's going to happen whenever she does get on the ball. So I really enjoyed seeing those two play this year. We're just we'll come back and we'll look at some more things like that over the course of the next couple of episodes, guys. But we're just going to jump onto the the quiz. So it's quite a good quiz this week, and hopefully none of you will be on the Google slides peeking at the answers, Mr. Banks.
No.
Not
this
week,
week,
definitely not.
You probably have.
Not this week, son.
So
That
right,
would
we'll start
insinuate
with
you've done
we'll
it
start
before.
with. Aye, that was the point. I think he has been, Jack. That's why he's apparently never won a quiz. Sorry, never lost a quiz. Anyway, we're going to start with, same as always, 3 questions for the men, 3 questions for the women's, and then we'll round up the podcast just giving a wee thanks to the listeners. So the first men's question is, who were our 3 top goal scorers this season?
Oh, I know this. I think I know this. Can I go first?
Yep.
Okay, so it's Martin Boyle, Kyle McGuinness, and James Scott.
Wrong. You got 2 right. You've got 1 wrong. Charlie?
Martin Boyle, James Scott, Nisbet.
That's correct. 1-0 to Chaz. So yes, James Scott's 4 goals and was it 2 games?
That's mentally. He scored.
Has popped him into.
That tells you all you need to know.
Has popped him into the top scorer bracket there.
Paul McGinn was in for a run as well. But
Paul
that's
McGinn's
crazy.
4th on the list.
Aye.
That's mental.
Right. Here's one for you guys. Just reflecting on the season. Who had the best goal? So this is sort of shots to goal conversion rate this season, shared by 2 players. 2 I don't think you would expect.
Shared by 2 players, I don't think we expect the best shots to go. Right. This is difficult. I'll let Charlie go first. I've had a mind blank.
Paul McGinn and Harry Clark.
You've got 1 correct. Jack, do you want to have a guess?
I'm going to say Paul McGinn and I'm going to say Jake Doyle Hayes.
Hey, you've got it. You've got it.
Did he only shoot twice this season?
No, he shot 4 times, 2 goals, 50% conversion rate.
I can't remember
Paul
him
McGinn,
doing that 4 times.
6 shots, 3 goals.
Wow.
So there you have it. Right, last question on the men's. How many goals did we concede this season in the league?
Too many.
Charlie,
That's
you
a
want to
great
go first?
answer, Charlie.
Actually, that's not true because we
It's
had
not
like
true. No,
we had
got
the 4th best defensive record in the league.
I'm going
no,
to
we
say
had the 3rd actually, I believe,
Did we have the
behind the Old
3rd?
Firm. Yeah,
Wow.
we were just behind the Old Firm.
I think we conceded
Just give you time to get it up on Google, mate.
29 goals, but we only scored them. We didn't score that many.
You think we
I
only
think it's a
conceded
bit more
29?
I'm going to say 42.
Yeah, you're bang on the money again. Yes, 42.
I
Yeah.
didn't think we conceded
I
that
only
many.
meant because I seen that stat on Twitter earlier and somebody
You're
put
right.
a league table on with it.
I can't remember who it was, but if we find it, we'll retweet it and give credit where credit's due because that's a really good stat that someone's worked out there. But no, as far as I'm aware, unless my eyes deceive me here, we had the 3rd best record this season. Just outside the Old Firm. And goals for, 38 goals for. So scoring goals was a problem this season.
Yeah.
Aye.
So we only managed to score, what did I say there, 38?
38 times, aye.
Compared to last season, we managed
That's a goal a game, though, if you look at that.
Last season, we scored 48, so it makes a difference. So that's your 3 on the the men as we go in there. It's 2-1 Jack. So let's go into the women's quiz. First question: What was the women's biggest league win this season?
Jack, you're first.
Copy my answer. You're going to copy my answer, aren't you?
I know the answer.
If you think you know, let Charlie go first because I hate this.
4-1 against Hearts.
It's 7-1 against Motherwell.
Oh, you dirty bastard.
Can confirm that Jack's right again and he puts it to 3-1.
I thought that was a cup game.
No. That's right. No, that's it. That's the That's the correct answer. It was 7-1 against Motherwell. Now,
She's fine,
here's
thank you.
here's a question for you. Hey. Here's the next question for you, right? What was our heaviest league defeat this year?
Ooh. I think I know this. I'll go first. This time. It was 5-0 to the Rangers, I think.
It was
I'm only looking for the score.
5-0 against Rangers.
Oh, look at you two copying each other.
No,
You're both correct. Yeah,
was it not
yeah.
It was the week after we got beat 4-0 off Celtic, was it no?
No.
Was it a few weeks later?
It was 2 weeks after that because they had the cup game against Partick Thistle.
Oh, that's right.
Aye, so I can confirm you are correct. You're both correct. So what's that score at now? Is it 4-2?
Aye.
So it's 4-2. So if it's 4-2, that means that
Jack's won it again.
Jack has mathematically won it. So well done to you, Jack.
Thank you.
I'll no bother with the last question.
Now let's see if we can make it like that game against Inverness in the cup, 5-2.
Because I'd ran out of questions. That was it. I had
right.
You went and answered one of my questions because one was, what was our heaviest league defeat? I was only looking for the score, but you gave the team name as well, so you ruined it for yourself.
So really it's 5-3.
You wouldn't have got that.
No. I would have.
So that's 5-3. Listen, we've only got a couple minutes left. So just to round off, apparently a wee bit of news. Apparently we got a nice shout out yesterday at Player of the Year. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there just with financial issues and all that. But apparently we got a nice shout out for Player of the Year for following the women's team and updating the people in the women's team. So that was really good. We really appreciated that. And we hope that the listeners have enjoyed sort of the weekly updates of the women's team and Jack's insight and, mine and Charlie's insight as well into the women's team. And again, we just heavily encourage anybody who's maybe thinking about going along and supporting them next season to get involved, because it's decent. Like, Hibs are good. And I think next season they've got to be even better. And just as we round off episode 71, just a massive thanks to everybody who's actually tuned in to listen to us this, over the course of the season. I think when I sort of first sat down and thought about doing a podcast, I never realised it sounds cheesy now, but I didn't think I'd be sitting here 71 episodes later, still talking about Hibs, which has been really good. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It's done a lot for my mental health and that, and catching up with you two in terms of making good pals and that. I made a lot of good pals online. Some enemies as well, some foes in there as well, some wind-up merchants. Some people don't receive us very well for whatever reason, but still seem to listen because they know all of our insight, which is great. But no, just anything you like to say to the listeners and that?
Yeah, I'd like to say, first of all, thank you to you two, because it's given me a big platform to promote Hibs Women more and talk about Hibs Women, which is obviously great because the girls deserve it. So that's first of all, thank you to you two. And also, it's just given me a platform to talk about Hibs in general. Because as we know, I am Hibs AF. So it's been great to talk about Hibs and get things off my chest. And yeah, thank you everybody who's listened to us. Because honestly, your support means the world to me. Wouldn't I've done all the things like Boozy and all our player interviews without you guys. That's thanks to you. That's down to you. And massive thank you to the club as well for how much they've given us, both men's and women's team and the community foundation. All elements of the club have been great with us and have really welcomed us in and given us a lot. So again, thank you so much. And it's been great for my mental health as well, Calvin. I've got to say, and you know what? Sometimes I've had boo boys, but like James Scott, I think we've shut the boo boys up. So there we go.
And Charlie?
Aye, no bad for a wee lockdown project, It's been a up and down season following Hibs, but I wouldn't want to do it with two other folk than used to. So aye, no bad for having beige opinions, So looking forward to getting the pre-season stuff going and getting a few guests, because we've had some positive conversations about them already. So looking forward to getting them on and see where we go next year, and hopefully a more positive season on the pitch for both Hibs men and women. So it's been a class season getting to do this every week.
So I think that's everything from us. Just stay tuned. We've got some really good content coming out. We've got just sort of first on the list, we've got the rebuilding Hibs. Obviously, once we get the new manager in, we'll do a podcast talking about the new manager and our thoughts and on that announcement, which is probably due within the next couple of days. So we've got the rebuild 2022-23 season, having a look at some additions we might make to the squad, some people that might be moving on. One I'm particularly excited for is our behind the scenes. So, like I said earlier in the podcast, having a look at some of the people who have been behind the scenes this season to help the team, like guys like Greg McHugh and even Adam Tomlinson and that, who does all the social medias. We're going to come back and do a more in-depth sort of review of both the men and women's squad, sort of doing a player rating, and we'll do our own little award ceremonies in terms of player of the year and things like that, which will be great. And I don't know if you can hear on the podcast here, the unofficial fourth member of the podcast. That's my Doug going mental in the background. So I'll need to tap out from here on out. But no, thanks for tuning in this season, and until next season, on the Hibs.